There's a silent crisis happening all around us, and almost no one is talking about it. It's not a war. It's not a disease. It's not even visible. But it's everywhere. A kind of sleep, not the one that ends when we open our eyes, but the kind that begins the moment we believe that the voice in our head is who we are. Eckhart Tolle warned us about this. Before his teachings reached millions, before his words became quoted on every corner of the internet, he said something chilling, something simple: most people are not really alive. They are only alive in thought. That statement might sound poetic, but it's far more serious than that. Because what he meant is this: we're not living life, we're rehearsing it. Remembering, projecting, anticipating, regretting. All inside the mind. While the actual life, the one that's happening right now, is passing us by. And the worst part? We think this is normal. From a young age, we were taught to identify ourselves with our thoughts. What are you thinking? What do you want to be? How do you feel about that? Questions that trained us to live entirely inside the mind. But the mind, as Tolle explained, is not a reliable master. It's a tool. And when you confuse the tool for the self, you become trapped in what he calls the egoic mind, the constant voice that judges, labels, fears, remembers, and plans. That voice never stops. It compares your life to others, fears what could go wrong, and constantly tells you that you're not enough unless you get more, do more, or become someone else. It's exhausting. And yet, most people never question it. They wake up, obey that voice, and live as though the present moment is just a stepping stone to something better. But what if that voice isn't the truth? What if the real you is the awareness beneath it? Eckhart said this before he died, metaphorically died, when his ego collapsed in a moment of deep inner despair. He was on the edge of giving up. The depression, the overthinking, the identity he built, all of it had become unbearable. And then, something shifted. In a flash of silence, he realized, I cannot live with myself any longer. But who is this I and who is a myself? That question shattered his inner narrative. What followed was not madness, but awakening. The death of the false self. And with it, the birth of true consciousness. From that moment on, he no longer lived inside his thoughts. He watched them. Like clouds passing in the sky. They came and went, but they were no longer in control. That's when he discovered the greatest truth, that who we are is not our story, not our past, not our plans. Who we are is the stillness behind all of it. But here's the chilling part. Most people never reach that moment. Most live their whole lives thinking about life, without ever experiencing it directly. They react instead of respond. They seek instead of rest. They build entire identities on pain, trauma, and opinion, guarding a self that was never real to begin with. Tolle said the ego feeds on resistance. That means every time you resist what is, whether it's traffic, a comment someone made, or a painful memory, you're actually strengthening the illusion of a separate self. You're feeding the very thing that's making you suffer. That's why awakening isn't about gaining something new. It's about letting go of what was never you. Letting go of the internal drama. Letting go of the belief that you must fix your life before you can be at peace. Pain is not the enemy. In fact, pain might be the only thing powerful enough to wake a person from the trance of thought. Eckhart Tolle said something haunting yet liberating: suffering is necessary, until it's not. That line seems paradoxical at first. But what he meant was that most people need to suffer not because pain is virtuous, but because it's often the only experience that forces them to look inward. When everything in life is going well, the ego strengthens. It becomes more comfortable, more confident, more subtle in its control. But when life shatters, when loss hits, when the relationship ends, when the job disappears, when illness arrives, suddenly, the identity we've built can't hold. And in that moment of collapse, something else has a chance to emerge. Awareness. Presence. The real self that was there all along, buried beneath layers of mental noise. Eckhart Tolle's own story proves this. Before his spiritual awakening, he spent years in a deep depression. His thoughts were toxic, repetitive, and unrelenting. Every day felt like a burden, every moment like a battle. He described it as a living with a monster in the mind. But instead of escaping it, through distraction, medication, or blame, he sat in it. He faced the full weight of his suffering, and that's when something cracked open. In the silence beneath his despair, he heard no voice, no judgment, just pure being. For the first time, he wasn't trying to escape life, he was in life, completely. That's the paradox. Suffering feels like destruction, but in reality, it destroys only the false parts of us. What remains is the truth. But most people don't want to face their pain. We've been trained to run from it, to numb it with food, entertainment, work, or even spiritual distractions. We read books, repeat affirmations, and chase positive vibes while silently avoiding the uncomfortable truth that awakening requires confrontation. Tolle emphasized that pain is a portal, not a punishment. The moment you stop resisting it, the moment you allow it to be there without trying to fix, judge, or label it, that's the moment transformation begins. Because pain, when fully accepted, becomes fuel for presence. It snaps you out of the mind and into the now. And in the now, even pain changes. It softens. It reveals its deeper message: you've been living too far from your essence. And here's what most people miss. The ego doesn't just fear pain, it feeds on it. It uses it to strengthen its identity. Look what they did to me. I'm a victim. I'll never be enough. These are not just thoughts, they are survival mechanisms of a false self that needs drama to feel alive. That's why many people unconsciously repeat painful patterns, stay in toxic relationships, or sabotage their own peace. Because as long as the ego is in control, suffering becomes a loop. But when awareness steps in, when you can observe the pain without becoming it, you break the loop. You interrupt the narrative. You realize you're not the pain, you're the witness of it. And that shift, even if small, is the beginning of freedom. The chilling truth is this: many people will spend their entire lives avoiding the one thing that could set them free. They will seek happiness while resisting the very process that leads to it. But those who are brave enough to face their suffering, to enter the fire of their own emotions without running, those are the ones who awaken. As Eckhart said, some changes look negative on the surface, but you will soon realize that space is being created in your life for something new to emerge. Pain clears space. And that space is sacred. It's where the real you begins to rise. In a world that glorifies movement, speed, and constant productivity, stillness almost seems like a threat. We've been conditioned to believe that if we're not doing something, we're falling behind. But Eckhart Tolle revealed something profoundly different, almost radical. He said, stillness is where creativity and solutions to problems are found. And he wasn't speaking metaphorically. Stillness is not emptiness. It's not laziness. It's not passivity. It's the most powerful state of consciousness we can access, because in stillness, the ego dissolves. The compulsive need to fix, to chase, to compare, to worry, it all loses its grip. What remains is presence. And in presence, you realize something chilling and beautiful at the same time: you were never missing anything. You were only distracted. But why does stillness feel so hard? Why do we feel uncomfortable in silence, in pauses, in simply being? The answer lies in the mind's addiction to stimulation. The ego survives through identification, with thoughts, with emotions, with achievements, with problems. When we become still, the ego panics. It has nothing to feed on. No drama, no future to chase, no past to regret. Just this moment. And for most people, this moment feels too empty to be enough. But Eckhart taught that this emptiness is not the absence of life, it's the purest form of it. Because only in stillness can you see clearly. Only in stillness can you meet yourself without all the noise. That's why so many spiritual traditions, from Buddhism to Christianity to Sufism, center their wisdom on silence. Stillness is not just peace, it's presence without condition. Eckhart once said, "Realize deeply that the present moment is all you ever have." Let that sink in. Not just as a quote, but as a lived truth. Everything you think is out there: success, love, peace, fulfillment, is actually available here, now, in the depth of your awareness. But to access it, you must stop trying to find life and start allowing it. That's where stillness comes in. It's not something you create, it's something you return to. Beneath every thought, beneath every emotion, beneath every identity, there is a space. That space is not empty. It's alive. And the more time you spend there, the more you realize that the answers you were chasing were always inside you. This is the silent revolution Eckhart initiated, not through shouting, not through debate, but through presence. He didn't offer complex theories. He didn't demand belief. He simply pointed us back to ourselves. And in doing so, he exposed the great lie of our age, that we must do more, achieve more, become more to be worthy. When in truth, worthiness is your natural state. But it can't be found in movement, it must be remembered in stillness. That's why the most awakened people are not the loudest. They are not trying to convince or convert. They are anchored in a depth the world has forgotten, a depth that exists within all of us. So the question becomes, can you sit in stillness? Can you allow this moment to be enough, without adding a story, without needing to fix anything? Because in that space, miracles happen. Not flashy, dramatic miracles, but quiet ones. The kind that change you from the inside out. The kind that transform fear into peace, confusion into clarity, and noise into presence. As Tolle reminded us, in the stillness of the present moment, all problems dissolve. Not because they disappear, but because your relationship to them changes. You become bigger than them. You become aware. One of the most shocking truths Eckhart Tolle ever shared is also one of the simplest: the future is an illusion. Not because planning is wrong. Not because goals don't matter. But because the future, as most people experience it, doesn't actually exist. It's a mental projection, a concept, a thought form. And yet, nearly every human being lives as though it's more real than the present moment. They sacrifice today for a tomorrow that never arrives. They chase happiness like a carrot on a stick, always one more accomplishment, one more relationship, one more miracle away. But the tragedy is this: life is never found in the future. Life only ever happens now. And the more we live in our heads, projecting into what could be, the more we miss what is, the only place where peace, love, and truth actually live. Eckhart called this psychological time, when the mind constantly projects into the next hour, day, or decade, while ignoring the depth of now. This obsession with the what's next is not just cultural, it's egoic. The ego uses time to survive. It says, you're not enough yet, but you will be once you achieve this, heal that, fix this part of yourself. So you live in anticipation. You fantasize. You plan obsessively. You fear. But you rarely arrive. And what makes this more dangerous is that the future becomes your identity. Someday I'll be happy. Someday I'll be successful. Someday things will make sense. But a someday is just a mental fantasy. And all the while, the only real moment you have, this one, is quietly slipping away. But what happens when you stop? When you stop waiting for life to begin? When you stop trying to get somewhere and start being here? That's when the shift occurs. That's when the anxiety fades, because anxiety lives in imagined futures. That's when regret loosens its grip, because regret is memory clinging to a story that no longer exists. And in that space, something extraordinary happens: you awaken. Not to a new version of your story, but to the truth that you were never your story. You were always awareness, watching, witnessing, present. This is what Eckhart meant when he said, nothing ever happened in the past, it happened in the now. And nothing will happen in the future, it will only ever happen now. The modern world thrives on urgency. Do more. Be more. Fix yourself. Buy time. Save time. But the deepest truth is this: you don't need more time, you need more presence. Because when you're fully present, time slows down. Or more accurately, it dissolves. What's left is peace. And that peace is not boring. It's not passive. It's alive. Vibrant. Deep. It's the same peace a child feels when staring at the sky, the same stillness you feel during a sunset or a moment of real connection. That is timelessness. And it's not rare. It's just hidden beneath layers of thought. Layers that dissolve the moment you stop resisting now. Eckhart Tolle's message was never about belief. It wasn't about becoming spiritual or adopting a new philosophy. It was about waking up from the trance of thought, the illusion of time, and the suffering of ego. And perhaps the most chilling truth he ever shared is this: you could die before you ever truly live. Not physically, but spiritually. Emotionally. Energetically. Because without presence, life becomes a dream. A dream you never wake from. But if you're here now, reading this, feeling this, then maybe, just maybe, you're already waking up. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. The end of illusion. The beginning of presence. Not someday. Now.